Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of ProjectPro's podcast on AI monetization, where we speak with industry AI leaders on what business outcomes they are seeing with AI. Data has always been important, even before AI became mainstream, but it's a lot more important right now. So we have with us a very special guest, Bojan Ciric, who's a technology fellow at Deloitte. He's had a very interesting experience starting with data governance, data management, and has a deep understanding of the data lifecycle, specifically focused on the banking and financial services industry for over a decade at Deloitte right now, and focused on AI innovation in applying data management in financial services. Uh, Bojan was also a member of Deloitte's FSI GenAI core team, where he authored Deloitte's GenAI data toolkit. He's also the GenAI innovation lead for the AWS and Databricks practices at Deloitte and co-author of their information modeling framework. Bojan, thank you for taking time to do this. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Binny. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm very excited to have this conversation with you, and hope the audience will find it useful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation at the intersection of data and AI. Given your deep experience in data management and AI currently, Bojan, how do you think Gen AI is changing the data management landscape today?
So, Gen AI definitely bring the value to the data management landscape. The processes about managing and getting the fit for purpose data stays the same. But the Gen AI can really be injected in a lot of data management processes and add the value to the significant time savings, which drives the efficiency, can bring the value to the automation of the some typically manually tasks, say, for instance, mapping between the business and technical data, and can also bring some value to data democratization, where the users now doesn't need to have the technical skills or even to overcome some limitations of the search functions of the data governance tools. So users can use the natural language questions, just ask the question and get any information that they need, either from the metadata or data sources, either from structured or unstructured data. So that significantly contributes to the data democratization.
Makes sense. It's a pretty wide spectrum of use cases. We'll start going through that one by one in this conversation. And as you talk about data management processes, Bojan, could you maybe just help us understand what are the list of kind of use cases or workflows in a data management process usually?
Yeah, sure. So when we start with the fit for purpose data, we talk about the data management and data governance to actually ensure that data are fit for purpose. And then specifically, if we drill down into that process, the core component or core artifact will be critical data element, because we do not manage all the data. We manage the data which we basically consider as a critical. And when we come to the critical data element, then the managing critical data element means to provide a proper definition of that element, which will be used across the entire organization, means to define the data quality rules applicable to that data element, and means to enforce these data quality rules across any representation of that element across the system. So this is just the core of the data governance process. And then if we come to the now people aspect of that, the key role in that process is data steward, who is actually responsible to provide all these business definitions.
Yeah.
And in organizations, the data steward is not typically like a primary role. So the people in the different business domains, they are playing their kind of roles in the business processes, and data stewardship is typically additional role in their responsibilities. Now, with the Gen AI, where Gen AI can actually accelerate the creation of the content, that data stewards can have that significant time savings, and that will actually impact the efficiency of the whole process.
That makes a lot of sense, which is like a developer or a business user of the data, they're more focused on their current use cases. They don't have the motivation to sit and write metadata about the data elements,
Exactly.
right? And there's always a data steward who's doing it, and that person always has a tough time coordinating with everybody else to get the information they need.
Exactly. And specifically, let's say in this process, how we apply Gen AI in that process,
Yeah,
even if you use the pre-trained large language models, they have very good knowledge about the specific domain. Specifically, I'm working in the financial services,
yeah,
and then we can literally cross the knowledge which is embedded in the model along with organizational resources that they have inside, and generate that content, generate the data quality rules, generate the definitions, and even we can generate a certain code for these data quality rules and accelerate the implementation. If we want to look numbers and the efficiencies, which is actually most important to provide a factual proof how Gen AI can add a value, we data steward for one medium complex business term data steward typically need to spend 6 to 8 hours, even more, to provide a full definition, to provide a full set of data quality rules. And then we also have some developer time to develop the code for these rules. Technically, with AI, with Gen AI, we can do that and get that content in less than 2 minutes. But that's only half of the. But that's only half of the job, because we cannot just use this content as is. As we know, the Gen AI generates the probabilistic outputs. So we need to implement the guardrails, and to make sure that this content is safe and fit for purpose, safe for use, for productional use. So what we do now, we bring that content in some data governance tool that organization is using, and go through the regular process of the approval of that specific data element.
Yeah.
Where the data steward and the domain owner can make some edits, do validation, and certify this content for the production use. They still need to spend some time on this, so this is not like 8 hours versus 2 minutes. So they may spend an hour on this, but in general, we have significant time savings here that can go the 30, 50, in some cases, even 70%.
Wow, that is significant in a very mission critical area. Just for the benefit of our viewers who are not very familiar with data management, you said there is a data element. Gen AI can help with definitions, code quality, and code quality rules, right? So could you maybe next level, could you give us an example of what is a data element? And when you say definition, what do you mean by that? An example of a data element?
Yeah, so let's go with very simple example. Let's say in bank we need a personal identifier for every person. That is typically a social security number. So that is critical data element for the bank. So we need to provide a comprehensive and accurate definition of the social security number, and we need to provide a set of data quality rules in the different dimensions like accuracy, validity, conformity, because what we want to do is, let's say, when we onboard, we don't want to have the customer records with the empty social security number or with the
Yeah.
invalid social security number.
Yeah.
We want to implement the preventive controls
Yeah.
rather than do the detective data quality and then go to the process where we need to fix the issue. We rather want to prevent them.
Yeah.
So when you define that critical business term or data element, you
Hmm.
define any set of applicable rules that
Yeah.
because the data steward is domain expert in that area. So that's the business person. It's not
Yeah.
technical person. And data steward should have the knowledge about what is the quality requirements for that data element and to
Yeah.
convert these quality requirements into data quality rules,
Yeah.
which are still written in the natural English language. And then these rules need to be have the technical implementation to any
Ah,
platform where that element is represented across.
ah, makes sense. That's very helpful. And you estimate that roughly takes a day, like roughly an 8 hours or something like that for a human to do. And
Yeah,
mhm.
absolutely, right.
Yeah.
So they depending on the specific domain and the specific business terms to
Yeah.
provide a comprehensive definition and
Yeah.
a complete set of data quality rules could take that time. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And then you mentioned that this is done and then it's put into a data governance tool where a human is verifying it. And when you mean by data governance tool, are you referring to a data catalog like a Colibra or a
Yes,
collation?
exactly. That can be Colibra, Legion, and any
Okay,
other data governance tool that organizations are using on the market.
I see. Got it. And today, Boyan, there is the data catalog. The business rules or the data quality rules and the definitions, where do they reside today? Are they there's some documents and Confluence and all of that? Or
So most organizations they already have implemented data governance tool and support which
yeah,
support the data governance process.
yeah,
So what we are talking here is now that without GenAI and the process that I just described,
yeah.
that business content is created within the tool where you go to
Ah,
Colibra and hey, start new business term or new data element.
yeah.
And then you need to, like I said, data steward need manually to provide these definitions, either
Mm,
based on his knowledge, do some research, take some references, but that is the time that data steward need to spend to first understand the data element and then to create all this content to describe the data element. By using the Gen AI, that process can be significantly accelerated,
yeah,
not just with the knowledge of the models, but we can also bring together the context from the organization for the organization specific data elements as
yeah.
well. And then, like I said, this is only 50%. The second 50% is to make sure that human validated the content and make it safe for production use.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes more sense. And in this new world of kind of a Gen AI data steward, what role do you think data catalogs play? How do you think they will evolve? Will they stay the same as a category, or will we see new kinds of data catalogs?
Data catalog is definitely necessary component in every architecture. Data architecture, what we can talk about is more about how to effectively and efficiently manage the data catalog, right? And how much manual work need to be put in that data catalog. What is the quality of data in that catalog? So I think that are the areas where we can get improvement in the future and more in the context to automate the content creation within the catalogs and also to make sure that this content is fit for purpose in terms of accuracy, validity, timeliness, and other
Okay,
aspects.
okay, makes sense. Boyan, traditionally when we speak about data, we always just, referring to structured, tabular kind of data. With Gen AI and that unlocking so much unstructured data, um, is there a lot of data governance and data elements and data catalogs? Will they also start containing references to unstructured data? How do you think that is going to play out?
Yeah, that is also area where we can get a great improvement, not just using the Gen AI, but using the some other technologies along with the Gen AI. For instance, the knowledge graphs, where we can, and we already have the use cases where we can bring the unstructured content, create a knowledge graph out of that content based on the certain rules.
Mhm.
And then you can effectively leverage this content, do the querying like you create any other knowledge graph from structured data.
Noted. Okay.
So that is specifically if we talk about the technology, so that the GRAG, right? Graph
Okay.
retrieval
Okay.
augmented generation.
I see. Okay. And so you think the knowledge graph is kind of it's like the data catalog for unstructured data. Is it a parallel role it plays? Would you say?
Not specifically, right? So we are not looking for replacement of the data governance tool. Either the data governance tool will evolve because most of them are created to manage the governance data. My comment was more about how we can convert the unstructured data into some structured format, which can be manageable either for use or for the management of unstructured data. So when we talk about the knowledge graph, it's more about how data will be organized, how data will be assessed, because I'll give you one simple example.
Yeah.
If you talk about relational databases and we have, let's say, some complex queries to get something out of relational databases, in some complex use cases, you can have the 20, 30 joins of the tables to get the data that you need, right? Which is not effective, not scalable, doesn't have the performance.
Mhm.
But if you organize the data in the knowledge graph where the data is natively organized and it's converted into the triples, the two nodes, a relationship between them, then that query can be very trivial, right? So, and you get a data that you need.
Makes sense. Okay. And then in this new world, Boyan, where you have Gen AI data stewards, so the average quality of data inside a company has gone up. Uh, what is going to change? Uh, is it going to be more effective decisions? Are we going to have better data products or more co-pilots? Like, what will change, do you think, because of Gen AI data stewards inside a company?
So, what will change? The bigger changes in the efficiency and effectiveness,
Mm.
which is a very important factor because one of the reasons why a lot of organizations are not mature in their data governance process and doesn't get a good results and outcomes and fit for purpose of data is because, like I said, data steward is not primary role for the employees who work there and practitioners, and they often put out like a kind of less priority than their primary work, and that reflects to the results. So when GenAI brings the efficiency, you say, hey, instead of doing these 5 hours, you can actually get information. You can get a content in 2 minutes and spend additional 30 minutes to validate that content. So that is significant incentive for the data steward to use that kind of technology. And on the other side, the quality of content and that Gen AI can produce in that area. And we tested that, let's say, in the financial services industry is really amazing. You can get a really some exotic term like Macaulay duration and so on. And that is, you get a really amazing content just out of the box. Plus, when you cross that with the organizational information, you can really get a great quality. So just to summarize, two aspects. One is the efficiency and the second is quality, right?
Yeah, excellent. That's very helpful. And since you mentioned financial services and you have a ton of experience in financial services and AI and data management, what are some other workflows or use cases in financial services you think AI will have the most impact?
Yeah, so what we see is we actually in the toolkit that you mentioned, so we created more than 30 use cases in the different areas across the data space and across the business domains, where GenAI really can have the great impact, the similar that I described for data steward. One of the use cases, let's say if you stay with the data management and the metadata aspect, one of the important use cases is, let's say, business process management, where you can leverage GenAI for different kind of automation, specifically related to standard notations, how you manage the business processes, let's say BPM and business process modeling notation 2.0. And the one example is that, let's say, in the organization, there is a big initiative that you want to document your business processes. You don't have this business process documented. You have some diagrams, which are just images of the business processes. So you can leverage GenAI, which can analyze that image and create the document business process and create a specification of that business process in standard notation, which is BPM and 2.0. Now, every business process modeling tool support that notation. This is machine readable code. So you can immediately start using that for the process optimization, automation, and everything. So that's just one example, right? Where before GenAI, that is the purely manual process to convert this, right? The second aspect is, let's say, if you go a little bit more to the financial services and the business domain, is the fraud detection, where you can just combine a lot of structured and unstructured information specific to that domain. Let's say customer transactions on one side. On the other side, you can get unstructured information, which is customer call center transcripts. And you can create the knowledge graph. Now you can leverage that for another big aspect of the GenAI, which is conversational BI, where the users without technical experience can actually create the questions in natural language. That questions can be converted into the query, in this case, knowledge graph. Results will be, query will be executed, results sent to LLM, and LLM will prepare the response to the user. So it will be kind of chat experience with the data sources that you have. Before that, you integrate your structured and unstructured data sources, and that is very effective tool when you do the investigation. Let's say you get some flag transaction from the customer. Now you need to do the investigation to see whether that is really some fraudulent transaction. You do the queries to see whether customer changed their login password, how time he logged. So try to find the root cause if there is any fraud in this use case. And at the end, after all this investigation, you can just say to the agent, okay, now based on all this conversation, my decision is to mark this as a fraud. Please summarize the case, and then the LLM will create a whole summarized case for you that you can just submit for the resolution. So again, great time savings, democratization of data, because now you don't need to know the Cypher query or SQL to get the data. You can just use the natural language questions.
Okay, that's a very powerful use case in customer service and fraud resolutions. You mentioned knowledge graph a couple of times, and I have one question on that, which is So there are the data stores. There is like I guess the data warehouse or the data lakes and all of that stuff. And then on top, there is a data catalog and there's an application layer. Do you think the knowledge graph is going to be a new layer here, or and if it is, who's going to build the knowledge graph? Is there going to be a new category of tools, or will each company build their own knowledge graph, custom build it? How do you think that's going to evolve?
Yeah, so depending on what kind of architecture organizations want to use, let's say
Mhm.
if you go with implementation of some data fabric kind of data architecture, then knowledge
Mhm.
graph is the foundational component where in general you can create some virtual knowledge graph on top of your any existing sources, and then that is the integration layer on top of that. But in other architectures, the knowledge graph is just one of the kind of analytical storages when you can similarly like you have the data marts on the top of the data warehouse. So
Mm.
it's a more about the consumption layer where the users can where the use cases like this one that I just described, where is the
Yeah,
fraud detection, the knowledge graph can be most effective way to use that to implement that use case. But also on the other use cases, let's even in the back office, one of the use cases we had is the conversational BI on top of metadata repository, where the organizations which doesn't have the centralized data catalogs, or they use the multiple tools, or
Mhm.
across the organizations, or they have the different metadata repositories that they can integrate the metadata from different sources again into the knowledge graph, and then provide a conversational experience on top of that.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. And um, you have this magical technology of Gen AI, and then there's all these amazing use cases that you mentioned. As a data and AI leader, what are your biggest problems or challenges to applying this technology to these use cases and getting outcomes?
Yeah, so one thing is, first there is a certain, let's say if organization want to go and start leveraging the Gen AI, there are certain steps that they need to do and accomplish before they go into the use cases, right? So first
Mm-hmm.
one is to create their Gen AI strategy, or to augment the AI strategy with the Gen AI aspect, to enable the institutional use of the Gen AI in the organization. The second one is discussion about the platform, so how we want to use Gen AI, what kind of models we want. Do we want to create on-premise? We want to go some hyperscaler. Which hyperscaler? That decision may impact what kind of model we want to use, specifically for the large language models. So that are the basically steps before you get into the use cases. Then there is also, I would say, a three-step process how you make that real in the organization. The first one is what we call the excitement phase, where we identify the impactful use cases, and we create a proof of concepts, which doesn't need to be large scale. For some of these POCs, which are mostly pathful, we actually go and create the next step, which is the version one with a limited number of users, where we still learn, still fine tune the application. And then in the third step, we actually go at scale and make it available for production use. So that's one aspect. The second aspect, also very important, is that switch from the POC to production. Right? So that's in GenAI, that's much, I would say, bigger and more complex step than in the traditional applications, because uh, we need to production use of Gen AI actually includes the several aspects like large language model operations, where we need to track the performance of the models. Then also includes the evaluations when we need to do the benchmark against the standard reference frameworks. We need to implement the defensive UI, where we need to make sure that UI is designed and created and have the functionality on the way that users can actually effectively use the Gen AI. And finally, the guardrails. We need to implement the guardrails and to prevent any misuse of the LLMs. Either there is some specific sensitive topics, maybe PI information, or any other aspects. So when you get that Gen AI project from POC to the production, so all these aspects are super important.
Got it. Okay, that's a pretty exhaustive list of potential hurdles and challenges and problems to solve for. And there is so much happening in AI right now. How do you stay updated? What are your favorite online resources to stay in touch with what's happening?
So basically that's a little bit of everything. So in general, I'm really lucky to working with Deloitte, where we have really great internal resources for that. The second aspect, we have the alliances with our partners. Specifically, you mentioned I'm very involved in the operations with the AWS and Databricks. So that is another channel, official channel. And then in addition to that, there is plenty of content publicly available, where either through some articles, from some articles to some specific websites where we can get in some cases even the YouTube videos or so on. So basically every available resource at this point.
Okay. And the other thing I was curious about, Bojan, is that there is so much promise of Gen AI right now, so much we are all hoping for. What can go wrong, according to you? What are some scenarios where the promise, all the opportunities and the promises may not work out? Why would it not work out?
So that is exactly these four pillars that I mentioned when you go from POC to production. That's the, I think, breaking point, because most of POCs are very successful, but very few productions are very successful because you don't go across all these pillars that I mentioned, right? Where you need a guardrails, you need evaluation, you need a defensive UI, and you need LLM ops. So each of these pillars are equally important, right? You miss one, then you will be you will have the issues in the production.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. That's extremely helpful, Bojan. I really appreciate you taking time to do this. Thank you so much for your time and inputs.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure.